Yes, we know what time it is. Alrighty. Hey everybody, Steve here, the retired hobby tech guy, expat in Korea. Today, 3D print your own Army Painter paint rack for free on Creality Cloud. Yeah, this is going to be some fun stuff. What we ended up doing is making this paint rack here. It's a little thing that we got going on. You can see that. Minimal, got some holes in it. It's got the little viewing window. Pretty nice. Got the rounded edges and corners. I mean, yeah, spared no expense on this thing here. So I had a guy that contacted me who liked my last paint rack. It was kind of like a square, boxy, totalitarian type of, very boxy German looking type of thing, and it held a bunch of paints, 200 millimeter, 100, and of course all the way down to 17 milliliter bottles. So you get a variety and assortment on that shelf, and I was able to put that, hang my paints in. It works out great. Probably need to do a little bit of adjustment on the holes so that the holes line up with the Scatus. If you don't know what the Scatus is, it's an IKEA Scatus pegboard that has board with holes, and the holes line up, so I got to work on that. But with that, today, finally posted this, and we're going to take a look and show you how this thing came to be. Okay, so before we do that, like and subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate that, and let's jump right in. Okay, so here we are. This is Tinkercad. Yeah, I'm not that smart of a guy to do the full-blown Blender, CAD, Whoosy stuff, so I just have to do what I can in Tinkercad. So we'll take a look at this. This is what I ended up doing. When I was considering a paint rack, as you can see, basically I started out with just some basic shapes, with a big long rectangle, a little bit board in the back, and then put those things together and said, okay, well, and if I wanted to hollow this out for like a shelf unit, what I could end up doing is probably something like this. So you could probably just do, like this, and then you could drag all this in, and then, do some little adjustments. And then what you could end up doing is grouping those together, and boom, you've got a nice little shelf there, and yeah, it works out pretty good. So with that, I didn't want to have the traditional shelf. So what I ended up doing was making, there it goes. Of course, I did it all the way. Of course, now, seriously, really? If I did it like that, and then group that all together, and then eventually, yeah, you could get the little shelf there. So that's basically what I ended up doing on the first one. Well, on this one here, I wanted to have individual racks or individual paint holders for the 17 milliliter bottles that is used for Army Painter. And paint drop bottles are about that size as well. Specifically Army Painter, 17 milliliter. So what I ended up doing, as you can see in this picture, I took some fillets here that I found on Tinkercad and kind of sized them down to get those rounded corners right on that corner edge there. And then what I ended up doing is measuring the paint bottle, found out the dimensions on that, and so what I ended up doing is getting a cylinder, and then as you can see here, I had a little bit of a square, and I set that in there and grouped those together, and then I just copied those and went down the line and of course centered it and all that stuff. So, and then I did another fillet that you can see right here to kind of get away from that sharp edge right there. And of course, let's take a look at it. There it is. There's a better view of it. Tinkercad. So that is the fillet right there to kind of cut off of those tops there. And then we ended up with kind of definitely a nicer finish on this. And then what we ended up doing is adding holes in there. And what I did was measure out the holes on the IKEA Scatus pegboard, which the dead center of each hole is 40 millimeters to 40 millimeters. So I figured, we'll do a series of those, and we've got our holes on there. So those all line up. That's good. It's not Scatus approved or whatever. It's just holes. You could put some bolts through it and put it onto your Scatus, and boom, you'd be good to go. I actually tested that out and it ends up working. And then what I wanted to do is I wanted to get away from a lot of material. So what I ended up doing here, as you can see, we end up having some holes in the bottom, and I wanted enough material to be able to hold the bottle, obviously, but I wanted to get rid of some material so that way I could try to keep this down in regards to how much filament you're going to be using. So what I ended up doing is, in my first iteration of this, I didn't use the correct sizing and it was a little bit heavy, and so I had to go back to the drawing board. I also came to the conclusion that if I print this as big as I want on my K2 Plus, then other people that have smaller build plates with like a 256 cubed wouldn't be able to print this out. So I was like, okay, well, go big or go home, or make it so basically anybody could print it out with any size printer. And I was like, okay, well, I'll please everybody, if you can actually do such a thing. So added the holes in there, and this is the final product. So yeah, looks up pretty good. I mean, you can print this in place without supports, but it should be noted that the holes on here might get a little wonky. They might get a little oblong and a little messed up at the top. Kind of depends. Sometimes I've had them come out good. Sometimes they're a little off. But if you use the tree supports on the build plate only, it's minimal material. I think this whole thing, we'll take a look and see how much this actually came out for the filament that I had to buy, which is Creality K2 Plus, not Creality K2 Plus, Creality Hyper PLA as my filament, and I think I paid like $20 a roll or something like that. So each one of these came out to like $1 something, less than $2, which is a lot better than the previous one, which was bigger and bulkier, and it was like double the price. So really what I wanted to do with this is make a smaller, nicer, more finished product than the boxy little thing that we can see right back there, just kind of the shelf thing. So I think we ended up doing that with this. I was thinking about even stripping away more, kind of put some holes in the back here, but then it would need supports and stuff like that. Thought about putting a design or something, like a triangle to get rid of some more filament. But really, I think this printed out like less than 70 grams. So, for $1.50 or less or whatever it came out to with the gyroid at 5% infill, I didn't really want to, keep going thinner and thinner and thinner. I could have taken away some material in between the holes, something like that. But really, I could have, the other thing I could have ended up doing is like putting a cylinder if I wanted to. And I'm just thinking about this. But I could end up just putting a cylinder and have that go all the way through, and then, just kind of copy this over and do the same thing. And then, let's see, copy it again. Well, it goes over there. So, I could end up taking this and reducing even more filament from this. Have these holes go all the way through, and then I could do holes. Let's see. I could do that. Let's just do that and redo that, and I could do something like that. To really go bare bones with this. I don't know. Maybe I'll do that. See what I can get away with. But for now, we just end up with the print that we have here, and it turned out really well. Again, it's really light. It comes out really nice. And what we'll do is let's take a look at the slicing software, Creality Print, and we can take a look at this. So there it is in all its glory. Did it in Hyper PLA black, 0.2 layer height, again 5% gyroid, so that worked out pretty good. If we do the preview on this, and again I did supports on this, so what we can end up seeing here is 2 hours and 33 minutes. Filament was 68.43 grams, so under 70 grams. Filament length cost $1.37. So $1.37. I think what I'll do is I'm going to go back and try to make a skeletonized version and see how light I can get it by doing those holes and stuff. But that'll be another thing. But yeah, it ends up $1.37 for a paint rack. That's pretty good. That holds 8 paints. So again, printed on the Creality K2 Plus. Just a pretty nice little thing there. Some of the different settings that I ran into when I did the first version and I printed out, I noticed I had some separation, and what I ended up doing by the recommendation of a guy named Ferrithus was able to, what was it? Here it is, the infill wall overlap. The stock setting on that is 15. Actually, it says that there that it's usually 10 to 15% to minimize over extrusion. But this is, the infill area is enlarged slightly to overlap with the wall for better bonding. So what I wasn't getting on my prints for some reason was the infill wasn't touching the walls and there were still some holes. So his suggestion from his experience was, hey, bump that up to 60 and you shouldn't have that problem. So I ran a few tests, ended up it worked well. If you don't have that problem, then don't worry about the setting. But yeah, that's what it came out to there. So kind of go through the process and show everything. It really ended up being a nice little print. And what we can end up doing is going over here to my Creality Cloud account, The Varied Life, and we've got a number of models. I got 11 models so far. So I got like a single airbrush stand. I got a self-supporting airbrush stand. The first one works with 3M tape. Paintbrush holders, a couple of different ones of those. Build plate holder that I put onto the side of my K2 Plus. Little spool drawers, and I think I had some people remix that to make it better, which is always nice. Stanley dual melt gold pro glue gun. Had some V-hex shelves that I made, a little frame for a round and rectangular frame, and there's the wall mount paint rack, and this is the new one here. So if we take a look at the new one here, yeah, this turned out pretty good. I was pretty happy about this. And again, it's for 17 milliliter bottles. You can definitely see where you can read and see the paint. I wanted that window there. And the next picture that we end up seeing, there in all its glory, and there it shows it printing with the 5% gyroid infill. Again, minimal amount. I could probably drop that down a little bit more, but I think the 5% is good enough. Let's see, what else do we got? Dun, dun, dun. Less than 70 grams of PLA. Again, that's going to be dependent upon your infill and percentage. And that's another shot of me putting that together. I just don't want people thinking that I just, ripped off somebody else's stuff. So, and there are people that are like, hey, how can you do that? And, maybe I'll go through and show you how to build that in another video. But again, these holes line up with the Scatus pegboard, which is nice. And yeah, it just turns out it's kind of a cool thing. It works out really well. So it's got the information here. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel. Always got to plug the YouTube channel and buy me a coffee because everybody knows I love my coffee. It's got the 3MF files. So in other words, if you download this from Creality Cloud, boom, you could print it just right from Creality Cloud. You can also download everything and you'll be good to go. And yeah, thanks to Therapist for some settings on that. Got to give credit where credit is due. So yeah, it was a really nice print. I had a good time despite having to do it a few times over. Measure twice before you go to town. It's amazing. For some strange reason, I messed up on the measurement of the bottles, and so when I made the first one, it was like the bottles wouldn't fit, and I was like, I didn't print it out, but just before I exported it, I was like, wait a second, let me measure this just one last time before I export and print, and sure enough, the holes were too small for the bottles, the bottle holder, the rack. So yeah, you can end up getting this, and like I said, you can find this on Creality Prints, like we see there. Again, a paint rack for free. Shows you how all that works, how I made it in Tinkercad. It is a nice little paint rack. And again, it'll hold 8 paints of Army Painter or 17 milliliter bottles, free to download. And like we showed on the preview here, the total cost of this was $1.37 to print this out with Creality Hyper PLA, gyroid infill 5%. You can't beat that, but I'm going to try to beat it. I'm going to try to skeletonize this, and maybe I'll post another one. We'll definitely do a video on that. So if you're interested in a paint rack, and I also have the other one, the other paint shelf, not as nice and contoured as this one here, as you can see, but that turned out pretty good. I mean, it is a nice paint rack. You can see, and it's made with Tinkercad, so it's not like crazy, super high speed, low drag or whatever. If you wanted to do a little bit nicer, you could probably do some fuzzy skin on this, and depending on how much fuzz you wanted on this, you could set those accordingly, or you could just iron the top surfaces. You know, there's a number of things that you could end up doing. But yeah, this works out pretty good. And like I said, it's pretty light. It's not bad. It's less than 70 grams. So I'm going to see if I can put some of those holes and skeletonize this a little bit more and do a skeletonized version, and see how light we can get that. So that's what we got going on. Yeah, the Army Painter paint rack can hold up to 8 paint bottles, and it turned out pretty good. So yeah, head on over to Creality Cloud. I'll actually I don't think I put the link in there, did I? I'll put it in the description box. I'll make sure that I put it in the description box for the Creality Cloud, so that you can do that and download it for free and print it on your 3D printer. Share, give it to a bunch of people, I don't care. Just be sure to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. So yeah, and there is the man, Ferrithus, the man who is responsible for helping me do a lot of cool stuff and help me kind of dial in some settings and some stuff that he's experienced to help this little thing come out here. Again, yeah, boom, there you are, dude. Tops in my book. I appreciate the help. That and other things when we did the live stream the other day. So yeah, just going over the print, the final print of the, and as you can see, that top looks a lot better. That's thanks to you, Ferrithus. Yeah, that came out a lot better. And yeah, great, awesome stuff. And it's under 70 grams. So we're going to skeletonize that a little bit more, and we're going to close this video out. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate that. If you want to do me a solid, you can buy me a coffee, link in the description box, and that's the scrolling ticker of all these cool stuff. But yeah, very nice indeed. Yes, very nice. And you had your hand in that, and I appreciate that. That was awesome. I did end up printing, matter of fact, you're going to make me go back and do this, aren't you? Yep. So I printed out a couple of these. And which one? This was the first one. And as you can see, that top surface was kind of wonky. And yeah, that's a little wonky there. So, and as you can definitely see on right over here, see how it's kind of got those holes where the infill wasn't connecting to the walls and everything. Well, Ferrithus was the guy that keyed me in on the infill wall overlap. And which one is this? Is this the second one? Yeah, this is the second version, as we see there. And let me see if I get the light. So that got a little bit better. I mean, definitely a lot better. And then what I ended up doing, and that's with that infill wall overlap set to 60. And then what I ended up is doing just a very, very little bit of fuzzy skin to kind of change the top of that. And that came out pretty good. And what was the fuzzy wall setting? So it came out pretty good. So not bad. Actually, this is the best one. So I was happy with that. And the what was that? Fuzzy. What was my fuzzy skin setting? I think it. Well, now I can't remember it because it's not saved. Damn it, Jim. I want to say it was like one setting was fuzzy skin. Okay, it was fuzzy skin point distance was 0.5 and fuzzy skin thickness was 0.1. So that ended up, it was that was kind of the deal here. So yeah, just to break that up, so to get rid of that look, I should have gone maybe a little bit more, so you could kind of get rid of the layer lines. You still see the layer lines on there a little bit, but it definitely cleaned up. Really, really nice. But I think it would look really good if you did some fuzziness on here. Fuzz is good, fuzz is good. And it definitely cleaned that up. But I like the way this looks. So, you know, I put that on the Creality cloud to see if, you know, people can make that decision on their own. So, yeah, it ended up, it was a pretty good project. And like I said, I'm going to try to skeletonize this and see. I'm going to put some more holes in this and try to minimize the amount of material, because right now it was, what was this? It was 69, let me see, 69 grams, 68.43 grams. So I'm going to skeletonize this and we'll do another video and see how that pops out. So anyway, that's going to be it. I think we're going to close this video out and finish this up. Yep, there's just a tad of texture goes a long way. Yeah, it's you know, I've been looking into fuzziness for quite some time. I'm very fond of fuzziness, not huge, hairy, but a little bit of fuzz. A little bit of fuzz is good. So yeah. So that's what we end up going. Again, thanks, Therapist, for all the help on that and the fun time that we had yesterday. It was a really good discussion. And all the people down below that bought me coffee, they're awesome as well. Just an awesome hobby to be into. So with that, it's time to finish my latte. I'm about halfway through, and I'm going to start working on the skeletonized version of this, and we'll do another video and see what I can get away with. So with that, thank you all for watching, and we will see you on the next video. All right, peace. Good stuff. Bro, thank you. You're awesome.